want to talk Minnesota Timberwolves, though, because to me, I'll say this. I think Anthony Edwards went from wildly underrated to overrated in a year. Now, before we get to, I'll explain why in a second. But first of all, I do want to play some sound after Minnesota was eliminated in Game 5 of the OKC Thunder series, Western Conference Finals. Bree and Mary, you can play the sound.
It's exciting. I don't know why people would think it would hurt. I mean, it's exciting for me. I'm 23. I get to do it a whole bunch of times. I'm hurt more so for myself, for Mike. I came up short for Mike. Like I said, we tried last year. We couldn't get it. We tried again this year. We're going to try again next year. But hurting is a terrible word to use. I'm good.
First of all, do you have any problem with that? 23 years old. He's got many good years, we believe, ahead of him, but you would know better than anybody in this studio how hard it is to get to a Western Conference Finals.
Man, it's rough. But I don't have a problem with it because he is 23, and 23-year-olds don't win championships. Not as the star. Sure. They still learning the game, and that's why you always need veterans, veterans that keep positions and other good players. So we've seen it over the last couple of years, most recently the Denver Nuggets. They had Jokic and, won the championship. And then all of a sudden, Jamal Murray, of course, and all those guys. And they made some trades from that championship team. And then all of a sudden, we saw a slight decline to where they had to fire Mike Malone. And so to me, the Minnesota Timberwolves fall into that category without a championship. You've had back-to-back Western Conference Finals, and you lost both of them. Something has to change. And it might be coaching, because I think you can only listen to your coach for so many years, and then you need a new voice. And that's one of the things. And the easiest thing to do for teams is to get rid of the one instead of the 12-15, which is the team. You can't do that. So you just get rid of the head coach, get a new voice in, new energy, and see what happens. But they still need some other stuff as well. But Anthony Edwards, for lack of a better word, they trying to make him. I don't even know who's trying to make him the face of the league. First of all, I don't know if it's the NBA, if it's the media, but it's like that stuff happens. It usually happens organically.
I agree.
I remember when Magic and Bird, they were the faces of the NBA. Then all of a sudden, that young fella out of North Carolina came in. Through everything, he just kept putting up 30 points, 40, 50. He became the face of the league.
By the way, is it true? I saw a story where you said something about Michael and your mom got mad about it. Is that true?
Man, yeah, it's true.
Okay, what happened? I just saw on Instagram.
Rest in peace, mama. But yeah, so
Go ahead.
I foul people.
Okay.
Sure. When they need it. So we were playing a game in Chicago, and Mike tried to dunk on me. I'm not allowing that. I sent him into the bleachers. They throw me out the game. So I'm like, okay, whatever. And as I'm leaving Chicago Stadium, I'm getting doused with beer and everything else. People, boo, you suck. But my mentality was, and it helped me in the long run because players around the league saw that I could hit Jordan without a care in the world. So they're like, oh, snap, if he does that to Mike, can you imagine what he'll do to me?
Sure.
So I had that going for me. But anyway, after every game, I would always call home, talk to my brother. We break down the games and talk to my mom. She gets on the phone yelling at me.
Wow.
What is wrong with you? Why you hit Michael? I'm like, I'm your son. Why are you mad at me? And she literally was mad at me.
Wow.
And it showed me the power of Jordan in that moment. It didn't matter who it was. My brother named his son Jordan.
Wow.
So it's like, I don't know, my weird ass family.
There you go.
But yeah, so the situation is this. Mike became a star. Kobe became a star. Steph Curry, all these guys, they organically became faces of the league, whether they wanted to or not. We're trying to force it on Anthony Edwards, and I don't think he's done enough for that. Regular season and a couple of Western Conference Finals appearances does not make you a face of the league. Yeah. You have to, and I'll tell you why, to me, he's not the face of the league according to the NBA. Too many fines for obscene language.
Sure.
Too many. He does a lot of for lack of a better word, and I'm going to say it here, and I can say it because I'm black, ghetto. Too many ghetto acts, and I hate that what he does. You know, he yelled some obscenity to a fan one time about how much money he has and other stuff, and I'm like, dude, how are you gonna be Can you imagine Michael Jordan doing something like that to a fan?
That's just Michael. Steph Curry.
None of them.
We could criticize LeBron for whatever. I mean,
outside of the Stephen A thing, you know, it's like he's on the Mount Rushmore by himself as far as off the court.
Of course.
So, so that's what I'm saying. A lot of that stuff is not playing well, you know. I don't even think he wants that.
That's what I'm saying. He said he doesn't. He said give it to Wemby.
Yeah.
I'll say this, and I do think, so my original premise, I do think he went from overrated or underrated to overrated in a year, and I say that because if you remember, and I tell J-Mart this all the time, but the ascension, and I understand we live in a media ecosystem where everybody's opinion has to be stronger than the last one. So if you remember last year, it went from, wow, he's really good, to he's the best young player in the league, to maybe he's the most talented player in the league, to is he already the best player in the league, to is he the next Michael Jordan? That all happened in like a 5-week period.
To he's Michael Jordan's son.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. And watching these playoffs, and I think the immaturity in his behavior and how he speaks to fans, whatever, I think it shows up on the court too. Where where there were so many games where, listen, credit to the Minnesota Timberwolves, back-to-back Western Conference Finals, best run that they've ever had as a franchise. But if you really go back and look at it, first of all, the Lakers were a you-know-what show in that opening round. I mean, the stats still blows my mind. 7 of 47 in a clinching game from 3, and Minnesota won that series, okay? Golden State, how does it go if Steph doesn't get hurt? And then you go to the OKC series where, you look at Ant Edwards' stat lines, they're good, but there is also a little bit left. He put up a lot of stats late in games when results were over. I'll tell you what, I want to continue the conversation on Anthony Edwards. I think if you don't watch the games, you just look at the stats at the end, and I understand it. Bree just played the sound of him after game 5, but 19 points in game 5, 16 on 5 of 13 in game 4. But you just look at it, and it's just, every time I watch him, I think there's something to be left to be desired. Now, that doesn't mean that he won't eventually be the best player in the league or whatever. But I just think that we were so quick to anoint him, not you and I, but we as the media.
Yeah.
And I just see a dude who has all the tools in the toolbox that I just don't think I don't even think it's that he doesn't know how to use them. I just think that he's just misusing them at this point.
He's young. That's number one. Number two, he's almost a stat filler.
That's what I feel like.
Stat patter. It's like, you're right. Most of his points, they coming in when the game's over. But let me ask you this. To be the face of the league and everything else, and I do agree to a certain extent. At first he was kind of like underrated. Now I can see the overrated statement being made. Does Anthony Edwards make his teammates better when he's on the floor? Nikola Jokic does, because he looks out for his teammates with his passing, his rebounding, communication, scoring. Steph Curry makes his teammates better.
No doubt.
As he goes, so does the Warriors. LeBron James makes teammates better. Luka makes teammates better.
Tyrese Halliburton, 13 assists.
Tyrese Halliburton makes teammates better. I don't see that with Anthony Edwards.
It's a great call.
I just don't see it. It's all about him. And until he figures that out, it's going to be a problem.
So I asked you this, and again, it's a different context. So I asked you earlier in the hour, Zion Williamson going through a lot of personal stuff, and I just said, is anybody going to be able to get through to him? Do you think somebody will eventually get through to Anthony? And there's famous stories throughout basketball of on the court. We're obviously talking strictly Anthony Edwards on the court. And you mentioned, your playing days against Michael Jordan stuff, but the famous stories of pre-Phil Jackson versus post-Phil Jackson and all of that. Do you think somebody will eventually get through to Anthony? Because I think it's a great point that I hadn't really thought of, is it's almost like he's playing his own game independent of the other four guys on the floor, and he gets his stats, I think, a lot of times late in games when it's decided one way or the other. But to your point, I don't see a guy that right now in his career, and he is still very young, but I don't see a guy that makes a lot of people better around him.
No, not at all. But I would say if they were able to pull the trigger on Kevin Durant, that makes a big difference. Now you have an all-star, all-NBA, Hall of Famer, top 50, top 25, guy that you defer to. And so that changed the dynamics for Anthony Edwards, because I still don't believe he's a 1. I think he's a great 2. He needs somebody else, but he needs somebody that he can respect. He doesn't respect Julius Randle. And Julius Randle's not better than him. So, and there's nobody else right now. He's the 1. And so to me, those are the things that the Timberwolves, Tim Connolly's going to have to figure out, because this young man, again, he's still 23 years old, but he needs a better veteran on that team. It's not Mike Conley. Mike Conley's done. He needs a top-notch veteran that can come in, that he can look at and see how he works, how he makes teammates better.
Don't you think some of that maturity should have come from the Olympic team last summer? I know it's only a 3-4 week window, but you're around those dudes 24 hours a day. You're practicing with them early in the summer. You're traveling with them. You're spending time with them. Because that's the thing that's kind of disappointing to me, is I thought we would kind of see an evolution of Anthony Edwards from a personality perspective after being around Steph and LeBron and, some of the, even the young guys. Jason Tatum is composed and whatever, Derek White. And it just didn't feel like it happened. I feel like that should have been the moment where he kind of was like, okay, this is what I have to do to kind of take it to the next level.
Yeah, you saw it, but you can only do so much, based on what you are willing to do.
Yep.
He can talk to Steph all day, but is he willing to give the ball up? Steph is willing to give the ball up and get it back. But I don't think he is. And again, his style of play is different as well. So there's so many different components for him. And to me, like I said, it's tough. Yeah, I was in the Olympics with all these guys, the great players, Durant and everybody, but you can say a lot of the great stuff for the sound bites.
Sure.
Which one do you really honestly believe?
Yep.
And embrace?
Yeah. No, and it's totally fair. And he had a couple interesting sound bites throughout the playoffs in terms of, he said something about, I think it was after Game 4. They asked him if he was disappointed in his effort, and he's like, I didn't take enough shots to be disappointed or whatever. And it's like,
it's stuff like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Oh my, he needs help. He's another one that needs help. He needs somebody in his corner.
Yeah. Now, and I think in his case, it's just veterans, guys that, like you said, he has to kind of fall in line and respect and all that. Yeah. So Timberwolves are out. They lose to OKC earlier in the week, and OKC, of course, will face Indy in the NBA Finals.